Before we get started with the show, I just wanted to remind you that if you need help with your letter of intent, go to Residencyhealthcom to look at the information there, and then let me know that you'd want to work with me one-on-one at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. That's tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. All right, let's get started with the show. Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm Tony Guerra, and I wanted to talk to you about the pre-letter of intent and avoiding residency rejection. I think it's easier for pharmacists to talk in something that avoiding a bad thing rather than talking about a positive thing, just because that's what we do. We make sure that patients avoid very bad things. So this pre-letter of intent or diagnostic letter of intent is just a letter of intent that you write way before you are ready to apply for residencies. And it's especially important now because many of you have had your clinicals shifted. We're seeing coronavirus in Florida, in Texas, in South Carolina. We're seeing some spikes in counties in California, and where we might have planned to end up at a clinical, that might actually reverse itself. So who knows what's going to happen in that regard. But what I want to talk about are matching what you're doing to where you're going. And I feel like this is something that should be so intuitive that you should do it right now, but it's not. A lot of times people treat residency like a college major. You know, I'm going to get to college, I'll take a few of the required classes, and then I'll kind of think about what my major is going to be. So they take a couple of the APPEs, they go through a couple of them, and then they start to think about what they want, whether it's ID or ambulatory care or whatever it is. But what you want to do is see right now, well, how well do you line up in the first place? So take your residency. The way to do it is you take your residency that you would ideally go to. Just find one. There's 4,000 of them. And look at their required rotations and look at their elective rotations. Now simply just match it up to the APPEs that you're going to have month by month. So you might see, okay, well, 3 of the required rotations, I'm going to have what prepares me for those in spring, not in fall. And the electives, I'm going to have a couple in fall, but it looks like I only really match with a couple. And what this tells you is a couple of things. 1, you may be applying to the wrong residency. 2, you really haven't had a chance to create a target and really haven't thought about what you're going to end up with and where you really fit and what your value is to someone. Again, we're going to an employer. People keep thinking of residency like they're going to school. Yes, there's learning involved, but you're being employed, and that's kind of the most important part of it. So what I'm recommending to everyone is that you first start by going to my Residencyhealth.com website. I have a template there. And to do this letter of intent, don't worry about grammar, don't worry about syntax, and figure out, okay, what do I have with clinical and service and research and teaching and all of those things, so that you can see, okay, well, I have these qualities, and then what are your APPEs? Which ones are you going to have? And now match all that up to what's required at this residency site. So the key here is to know where you are and where you're trying to go, and in some way match them. And it's really easy on the other end as people are looking at applications to see, okay, I look at their CV, I look at their letter of intent. In less than a minute, I can tell, okay, this is a hospitalist, this is an ambulatory care, this is somebody that has a focus in pediatrics or geriatrics or ID or something like that. And then when I look at it, I go, wait a minute, their experiences show that they're going to be in AmCare or community, but here they're saying they want to move on to cardio and critical care. Well, where is that in the background? I don't see it at all. And so it's a no match. And so it's just like playing that memory game where you say no match. Like, it's that fast where somebody can look at the applications and see, this group, this very large group actually, does not match at all. So what I've been doing since I help people with their letters of intent, it's $75 to help you with the 2 letters of intent, but I don't count this Diagnostic LOI as one of those 2. So I recommend that, you say, okay, well, I want to work with you, Tony. Great. And then you'll write this letter of intent. Don't worry about grammar and syntax. I fix all those things. But what you want to do is start looking, okay, well, I'm looking at this residency site and I've got these APPEs, but my APPEs got all mixed up. I'm going to have what I need, but not until April and May of next year. Well, that's a problem because you don't have what you need. Their rubric requires that you have a recommendation from a clinical specialist in a certain area if you want to go to their residency. And you're just not going to make it with the rubric. And for those of you that don't know, a rubric is basically when you get graded on something, and it's not like on points and things like that. You get graded on, okay, well, how does it match? What level of writing, syntax, etc. are you presenting? And those all go into the rubric. So let me give you a better analogy, I think. What a lot of you are doing is you're training for fall soccer. And maybe you're getting a lot of running in, and maybe you're doing something like CrossFit. So these are the 3 things I'm doing. I'm basically doing CrossFit. I do some gymnastics with the girls, and then we play a lot of soccer. However, the residency site that I'm looking at are the ping pong champions of the country. And yes, I get it. There's no ping pong residency or whatever. But how well did the skills that I have transfer? Great, I can do a handstand. But in soccer, we're keeping our arms behind our backs, avoiding contact with the hands and hand-eye coordination. So I just don't fit. So what I'm seeing over and over again is the same mistake I made in high school. I was a 3-sport athlete. I was decent as a football player. I made the varsity team. I was on the team for half the junior year and then all the senior year. I was discus thrower in track, and I went to states in wrestling, but never medaled or anything like that. But I was pretty good in 3 different sports. However, when I went to apply to schools, nobody wanted a 3-sport athlete. What they wanted was the very best. So it would have been better for me to choose one of those 3, see what position I was the very best, and see where I could work myself to the college level. It probably would have been wrestling since I was a state qualifier, but I was kind of exhausted of the dieting and the weight loss and all of that stuff. But if I was thinking about college, that's what they wanted. They didn't care that I did football and track. Great that I, had those experiences. They just wanted me to become a better wrestler. And so maybe I should have picked other sports that would have better made me a better wrestler. In the same way, you want to pick APP experiences and experiences within the experiences. Yes, you can't change your APPEs. Yes, you can't do anything about what coronavirus has done. But what you can do is recognize, okay, I got some gaps in there. I don't have any teaching. I haven't even mentored anybody. I haven't done any tutoring or anything like that. I've got to get some teaching. And so you go to your preceptor on the first day and say, hey, I really want to get some teaching. Okay, well, we don't really have any pharmacy students here, but some of the nursing students come by. Maybe we can tie you in with some of them, or maybe some of the med students and things like that. Oh man, I really haven't got any research done. Okay, well, there's some projects that I wanted to work on. Wasn't necessarily going to work on them now, but I could probably put them a little bit earlier. And then one of my colleagues is also working on something. You could probably help them as well. Okay. But you don't know this unless you've taken the time to reflect by writing this letter of intent. And that's why I'm saying you want to write the letter of intent now. It's key that you have this diagnostic to figure out, all right, of the big 5, clinical, service, research, teaching, and, oh gosh, it's escaping me now. That's really bad. Leadership. That's right, leadership. Of those 5, what experiences do you have? And how can you make the APPEs that you're going to do from now to December, how can you increase the level of those? And it's almost like a video game where if you think of each one of those 5 as having a certain number of bars, a national person has 10 bars, and then somebody who's the president of their fraternity or whatever in college maybe has 6 or 7 bars, and then someone who's led in a different way, maybe 2 or 3 bars. How can you increase those bars in those areas, especially clinical, if you're going to be thinking about becoming a hospitalist? So again, I do want to help you, but help yourself by checking out the template at Residencyhealthcom, see where your gaps are, and if you want to work with me, I can do an assessment of that and tell you, okay, well, this is where you're trying to head, this is what's missing, and this is how we can get there. Hey, thanks again for listening to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast. I do encourage you to go to Residencyhealth.com, get on the mailing list. I'll send you out an email every Friday during residency season, but then afterwards, I'll still have a number of episodes on helping you get through residency itself. And then if you're somebody that's looking at residency in the future, I'll also have content for that as well. If you have a question, I'm pretty good about getting back to you. And if I don't have an answer, I will know someone that does. So thanks again for listening to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please do rate and review. It really matters in terms of our ability to reach more people. Thanks again.